Welcome back to Community Conversations. I'm your host, Steve Mantis, and my guest today, John Rafferty, our MP for Thunder Bay Rainy River. Welcome back, John.
It's a pleasure.
So just before the break, I'd kind of set up, imagine yourself as Minister of Foreign Affairs. I'm not even sure if that's the right title. What would be the first thing you do in terms of our involvement in sub-Saharan Africa?
Well, let me just go back a little bit to answer that question. And there was a time 30 years ago, and 35, 40 years ago, where Canada was really on the world stage, and in particular had a policy, whether it was spoken or unspoken, to make sure that our foreign aid, for example, and the work that we did outside of Canada was directed to the poorest of the poor. And that meant Africa. Mm-hmm. That meant sub-Saharan Africa, and in fact still does. So what's happened over the years is the interest and the amount, the money, has decreased over time. And I can give you a good example as to what happened. I had an opportunity last year to travel with the Governor General, and which, by the way, is wonderful, because many Canadians don't realize that the Governor General is in fact our head of state, and so he's treated as if he were a king when he travels, mm-hmm. because he is de facto our head of state, and we traveled to Ghana and South Africa and Botswana. As I said in the earlier segment, I've been to Botswana and to Southern Africa, and I had traveled in Ghana, although I didn't live there. And so it was wonderful to go back, and wonderful to be part of this mission. We went to a research station in Ghana, and there's a maize that is named Sida maize, and the result, this hybrid maize was a direct result of the work, Canada's work, through Sida 40 years ago. And in fact, this hybrid of maize is actually grown and consumed right across West Africa. So that's the kind of good that we have done in the past. Mm-hmm. But it was pretty clear that in all three of those countries that we visited, there was sort of an undercurrent of, yeah, but what have you done lately? We've certainly lost our way in sub-Saharan Africa. Things have changed, priorities have changed with the government, and naturally, because that's where most of my overseas experience is, that's where I think we should actually be. But there are some things that I would like to see, and I would like to see, first of all, our foreign affairs and our foreign aid to be completely depoliticized. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't be about politics. It shouldn't be about supporting one country over another country or whatever the case may be. I think now is the right time to go back to the time when our philosophy was, we will help the poorest of the poor. And in many cases that meant scientific work, like the work that CETA did, but it also meant the kind of work that I did when I was there, which was education. We sent, over a number of decades, we sent a lot of teachers through WUSC and CUSO. Most of your viewers will know those two names. And at the same time, the benefit we get, of course, is we have an opportunity for young people to experience the rest of the world, and hopefully end up with that empathy and that understanding of what is out there in the rest of the world. Because I think the more educated you are, the more opportunities you have to travel and visit other cultures, the more tolerant you become. The more tolerant and the more understanding you become. And so, it's sort of a bad word in politics to say go back and do something the way it was done. But things in many cases were better at one time. Mm-hmm. And as you lose focus, you move in other directions, and mostly for political reasons, not for the real reasons that you should be. And so, there are ways that we can regain that prominence in the world, and not through military might, mm-hmm. Because we'll never compare with our neighbor to the south. But one of the ways we can do it is we can make sure that the face that we put to the world from Canada is a face that that people will see and understand and appreciate.
So we heard, John, earlier, your perseverance to really enter that public life of elected politics. What motivated you, and does it still motivate you today in terms of being involved as an elected official?
Well, I've always had an interest in politics. In fact, I worked this year. Marks the 45th anniversary of the first time I worked on an NDP campaign. So I've been around for a while, although I've had various instances where I haven't been in the country. When I was actually in Africa, I missed most of the Ray years. Bob Ray year. Maybe that's a good thing. I'm not
I wasn't here. I wasn't here.
I wasn't here. Sorry.
Didn't do it.
But so I've always had that interest, and when I had a radio show, it was a phone-in show. And I remember quite distinctly. It was in 1999. I can't remember exactly when it was, the actual date. But someone we talked about politics all the time, mostly civic politics, but federal, provincial politics. And someone phoned up and said, "John, you think you're so smart? Why don't you run?" And I thought about it, and I gave it lots of thought because in 2000. There wasn't much sign that the NDP was going to make very many gains in Northern Ontario, and so I knew it would be a bit of a project. And so it was, but I, of course, had to leave that job because I was getting more and more involved in politics, and so I just stuck with it and did what I could. And as you know, my federal riding is quite large, so it involved a fair amount of traveling and sleeping on friends' couches and that sort of thing. But those were good years, and the one thing that sort of year after year before I was elected that I came to realize pretty quickly is that there are segments of our populations in Northern Ontario who need a lot of help, who are falling through the cracks, and that sort of spurs you on when you think that, well, maybe I can do something to help, and so you do stick with it. So really, if you sort of count my years in politics, first running in 2000, this is 2015. I've really been at it for 15 years.
Yes.
Not the 6.5 years that I've been elected, but not just the 6.5 years. So it's been very, very rewarding in many ways. It's a difficult job. Sometimes I wish I were a little bit younger, a little more energy.
Me too.
But on the other hand, because all my children are gone, they don't live at home. You do have a certain amount of freedom that younger members of Parliament don't have, and I see members struggle with children. They have children who are 8 and 11, or in those really important years, and they're not home very much. And when they are, they drag them out to events or something, and kids get used to anything. They're very flexible, but it starts to eat away at some MPs after a while.
Indeed. We're going to need to just hold on that one. We're going
Sure.
to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Please stay with us.